When I began this series, I told myself there was one thing I would never do, and that thing was reload my save. There wasn't going to be anything too chaotic for me to handle. Nothing that would be able to make me hit the undo button. I was wrong. Hello. Welcome back to Sims 4 Rotational Drama, where I am gossiping with you all about the increasingly chaotic happenings in my current Sims 4 rotational save. If you've never heard of a rotational save, basically, that means that rather than spending all of your time in a single household, as you typically would in The Sims, you spend a bit of time in one before jumping to the next and then just rotating between them all. It's an incredibly fun and hectic way to play, and I highly recommend trying it if you haven't. I want to be upfront with you all. I went into this cycle of rotations thinking it would be the family special episode. We'd spend a week each with our biggest family units to see how they were doing, how the kids were growing up, what the dynamics were in these big households with so many Sims. But when I hopped into our first big family, the family that I feel fairly confident in saying is probably most people's favourites, I got the feeling that these 3 weeks were not going to play out how I intended. The first thing I wrote in my notes for this week was, main goal is not to start any drama, but to make sure everyone is progressing nicely. Work on aspirations, etc. But these wholesome intentions were simply not meant to be, because these Sims, they had other plans. And I need to clarify now, ahead of the game, that I didn't start this week with the intention to cause any of the following drama. I had no desire to fracture the lives of these Sims, who I know are so precious to so many of you. But when I opened the game, I saw the cracks beginning to show. Oh, and I knew what I had to do. So with that out of the way, let's jump into week 1 with Babs Lamore, Dusty Clifford, and Jay Huntington III. Quick recap, as it's been a minute since we've hung out with this lot. Babs Lamore is best friends with Jay Huntington III. Their friendship was so strong that they had a baby about it, Scarlett Lamore, who is a fully formed child now. Jay was not involved in Scarlett's life very much at the beginning. That role was instead taken by Dusty, Babs' neighbour and eventual roommate. The three of them grew closer in their own ways, to the point where Jay and Dusty started dating, whilst also both pursuing Babs, unbeknownst to the other. But this was okay because Dusty and Jay were both looking for an open relationship anyway. They both did their best to woo Babs, but perhaps wooed too close to the sun as Babs ended up pregnant. Unsure which one of her suitors was the father. However, this actually worked out pretty well for all involved parties, as they took it as an opportunity to all join together in a polyamorous relationship where they could all be together and all look after the kids regardless of who was technically the father of said kids. They ended up having another child after that as well, and have since just been a big happy family living the dream in the background of the past couple of episodes. A quick friendship reminder, Babs is friends with Johnny, Parker, Katrina, Zoe, Dawn, Gavin, Simone, and Paige. Dusty is friends with Dina, Ren, Parker, Don, Mitchell, and Nancy. And Jay is friends with a lot of people: Don, Johnny, Dina, Gavin, Nancy, Brendan, Edgar, Zoe, Aria, Raylyn, and Corinne. Dusty is exes with Zoe and for some reason dislikes Edgar. I don't know what happened there. And Jay is exes with Mitchell and has a bit of a side fling going with Katrina, which resulted in 2 more babies. Jumping into this household, I could immediately tell that the vibes were off. Dusty and Babs, whilst having great relationship satisfaction with each other, were both very unsatisfied in their relationship with Jay. Furthermore, Jay and Scarlett were like hardcore beefing with each other. They actually developed the difficult dynamic almost right away. They kept arguing, Jay kept nagging her, and Scarlett was talking back, and difficult was certainly the right word for it. So, at this point, very early on, mind you, I began to sense a bit of a story forming around Jay. I would like to propose the idea that Jay has become almost obsessed with the idea of legacy. It was mentioned in episode 2 that Jay was the one who owned the original roomie's house, And now this was a pretty big house that was worth a lot of money. And I had thought to myself that he had inherited it from family. And so I got to thinking, Huntington, that's like a fancy name. And the fact that he's J. Huntington III, that speaks to the idea of an established family legacy. What if the Huntingtons used to be a big, wealthy, important family akin to the Goths or the Landgrabs, but in recent generations, for whatever reason, have lost that status. And now Jay is the only Huntington left, and he's starting to actually do really well for himself. He's got a great high-paying job, he's got 2 beautiful partners, it's more than average. He's building a family. And so he starts getting the idea that he could be the one to rebuild the Huntington name, elevate it to the same heights as the Landgrabs. This could also tie in with the fact that it's almost Jay's birthday. He's about to go from being a young adult to an adult. So he's got this idea of legacy in his mind, but it's turning into a bit of an obsession. And I think that Babs and Dusty would have been growing a bit concerned by this behaviour. That would then explain their lack of relationship satisfaction with Jay. Perhaps he's been more concerned with his legacy rather than the actual current situation in front of him. I also think that this would explain the difficulties between him and Scarlett. Him not being around at the beginning of Scarlett's life meant that she became Scarlett Lamore rather than Scarlett Huntington. Though, I feel like even if Jay had been more involved, Babs probably still would have wanted her to be Scarlett Lamore, not Scarlett Huntington, because, like, she's the one who birthed her. Makes sense. But I think that Jay would see Scarlett as a missed opportunity. And especially because the previous 2 children had by Babs, the most recent ones, were technically Dusty's. Have confirmed Dusty is the father of those 2. So Jay doesn't feel like he has secured a proper heir to the Huntington legacy. So Jay's obsessing over legacy. And because I think he's seeing Dusty and Babs as not quite on board with this, and he's constantly faced with Scarlett, who I think reminds him that he's not been doing all of this properly, he's perhaps starting to crash out a little bit. We saw in the last episode, he asked 2 different people if he could move in with them, Johnny Zest and Don Lothario. Not exactly well-off Sims, but both kind of well-known names. Is he starting to freak out and attempt to find other Sims to build his legacy with? Is that what happened with Katrina? That one's a bit more difficult because I feel like the Calientes are already an established family. Not to the extent of the Landgrabs, you know, but still like pretty distinguished. I really like this idea of there being like prominent and influential families in the Sims world. I feel like it adds a bit more lore and depth, and it's a really fun dynamic for me to play with because it's really different to my usual household dynamic. I'm a real rags to riches fan, but with a bit more emphasis on the rags. I really like starting from nothing and having that very basic starting experience. I find that really fun. So I don't have a lot of experience playing with these huge wealthy families, and I'm kind of fascinated by the storytelling potential that they bring. Anyway, this idea was still only vaguely forming in my mind as I was playing at the start of the week. I hadn't yet cottoned on to the thought of Jay wanting a proper heir. So imagine my surprise when, despite me making a real effort to drown this household in birth control, Babs got pregnant again. And this time it was Jay's baby. Jay's 4th baby, I would like to point out. I cannot express simply how much I did not plan for having another baby in this household when I started this week. But obviously I wanted to do my best to embrace this turn of events. And I think it works quite well with the beginnings of Jay's crash out. With the confirmation that this kid was definitely his, Jay saw an opportunity to secure his Huntington heir. Jay, buddy, gotta stop seeing kids as opportunities. That's not healthy for anyone involved, I think. With another baby on the way, I think it was safe to say that this family had officially outgrown their house. They were actually living on the smallest possible lot size that wasn't like an apartment. So good for them for making it this far as a family of 6. So, in keeping with Jay's obsession, the family is moving to the fanciest neighborhood in Oasis Springs, directly opposite the Landgrab mansion. And I decided to build Jay his dream house. The house that, in his mind, would go on to serve the Huntingtons for generations. The Huntington residence, if you will. I am not a particularly experienced builder. I'm more of a decorator. The intricacies of building are often a bit much for me, but I wanted to give this a real go, mostly because I had doubts on whether I'd be able to find something on the gallery that had enough bedrooms and also accounted for 2 of the Sims in the family being fairies. So I built the Huntington residence from scratch, and I'm working on another video showing you guys the whole process of how I did it from the perspective of someone who is not very good at building and has perhaps very limited skills but very strong opinions, especially when it comes to the tastes of my particular Sims. So keep an eye out for that one. It should be coming out soon. Things are going tentatively okay in the new house. It's pretty sparsely furnished in a lot of places, but it's a work in progress. Jay had the house built with the intention of it evolving with the family over generations. And also, I didn't plan very well and ran out of money real quick. And I am not using money cheats in this save. I say that like I ever use them in other saves. I don't like it. I like to earn the money. Anyway, welcome wagon. We have the welcome wagon, and then Jay throws a party for his birthday, and for some reason, Nancy Landgrab briefly flirts with him. Dude, you just got married last episode. Stop that! Katrina is also at this birthday party, and at this point, I must remind you that the side fling that her and Jay have been having means a little bit more to her. Katrina has real feelings for this man, and she is not on board with his current polyamorous lifestyle. She wants Jay all for herself, and she keeps getting herself hurt by his affections because she just loves him so much, to the point where she had 2 of his babies. That's commitment. I reckon she thought that that might finally convince Jay that the 2 of them should be together. But when she attended his birthday party that night, she saw Jay canoodling with Dusty, and she got very upset about it. So Katrina now despises both Jay and Dusty, and I reckon she has claimed full custody over the twins. She doesn't want Jay seeing them anymore. He wasn't really seeing a lot of them in the first place. That's fine. Custody is very unserious in this game. It's very hand-wavy. Just like, don't think about it too hard. It's fine. Our next major event is the birth of the new baby. Jay, now really starting to speed towards that crash out, I think would have insisted on naming the new baby boy Jay Huntington IV. In my mind, Babs wouldn't have been thrilled about this choice, but everyone is starting to be a little bit worried about Jay, and I reckon she would have seen that this was important to him. So Jay has his heir to the Huntington legacy. All should be well now, right? Not quite. Dusty and Babs are both feeling kinda miserable all the time. The lack of satisfaction with Jay and that relationship is starting to take a toll on their happiness. And as much as I did try to work on it, like very genuinely, I put a lot of effort into getting them to hang out and canoodle, things just weren't getting better. At least not quickly and not significantly. And I think this makes a lot of sense. Oh, unfortunately, I do think it makes sense. Because whilst Babs at least has the materialistic trait and is probably enjoying all of the luxuries that come with such a massive house and this lifestyle that Jay is building, Dusty, on the other hand, I reckon is far too grounded for it all. He has no intentions of him or his kids becoming the next Landgrabs. And Jay is then reinforcing all of Dusty's worries by ignoring all of the other kids and just paying attention to little baby Jay. Then Dawn rings up Babs and asks if she wants to go on a date. Dude, you also just got married last week. Chill the fuck out. Dahlia, second oldest child of the family, ages up to a child. How exciting. But during all of the festivities, Jay starts going off at Scarlett. He is like yelling at her in front of the birthday cake. It's very dramatic. Babs then gets mad at Jay, and then Dusty also gets mad at Jay, and then Jay starts physically fighting Dusty right in front of all of the kids. Babs yells at Jay for that, because what the hell, man? And everyone goes to bed feeling a bit shitty. Then a burglar shows up. Okay, this all happened on Love Day, by the way. And then, now that Jay is a proper adult, because we had his birthday, he starts developing a midlife crisis. So this is an actual game mechanic added and growing together, where once your sim goes from a young adult to an adult, they have a chance to trigger a midlife crisis that will give them a bunch of different moodlets and some new goals to complete. It's completely optional whether you actually follow the goals and let it affect your decisions for that sim, but I always find that it makes for some really interesting storytelling. And I also need to clarify now that Jay's midlife crisis actually ended up being bugged out, and I wasn't able to see any of the objectives, so I just used it purely as a storytelling thing. Back to the drama. Jay and Babs are fighting so much that they are officially no longer best friends. And eventually, she calls it and she ends the relationship fully because she doesn't want the kids around Jay while he's crashing out like this. The fact that he's basically ignoring everyone except for the new baby, that really pissed her off. She is not one for choosing favorites in your family. But if she did have to pick, her favorite would be Scarlett. But shh, don't tell anyone that. Oh my god. Speaking of Scarlett, she's actually taking all of this pretty hard, which I think makes a lot of sense as Jay's other biological child. She gets a difficult dynamic with Dahlia. She gets a bunch of angry moodlets about little baby Jay, and she ends up developing a fear of being inferior. Oh, I feel so bad for her. Week 1 of these 3 weeks ends with Babs, Dusty, and the 4 kids moving out of the Huntington residence, leaving Jay behind to crash out on his own. Oh no! I feel like you guys aren't going to be happy with me about all of this. So, for week 2, rather than swapping to a completely new household, I decided to stay with Babs and Dusty. I debated over whether or not to stick with them for a while, but in the end, I felt that we had begun an interesting story arc here, and I wanted to see it through till the end. Having left behind Jay and his mansion and his money, Babs and Dusty didn't have a lot of resources with which to start their new life. I decided to continue to indulge my newfound love of building and make their new house from scratch as well. I won't be making a video about this one because, frankly, it's a bit shit. But it's merely the start of what this lot will eventually be. I'm picturing sort of an eco-haven, complete with a magnificent garden and like power-efficient everything, if I can manage it, eventually. In the meantime, it's a rectangle with shit furniture. This week with Babs and Dusty is all about forming the foundations of this new life that they have found themselves in. It's a lot of Dusty going to work, Babs writing books, and the kids getting bored because there wasn't enough money to buy them proper toys. When Dahlia aged up to a child, she gained the kleptomaniac trait. I always randomize the traits of the kids as they grow up. I find that that's more fun and interesting than just deciding their personalities myself. So whilst Scarlett is reaching the top of her class, Dahlia is stealing books from hers, but then summer break starts. Usually I do some sort of break or holiday for the kids using holidays in the calendar and just like ticking the day off work/school option, but I actually have the education overhaul mod, again linked in the description, which includes built-in winter and summer breaks for the kids. This was a bit of a blessing and a curse, because it was great seeing the kids interacting with each other and getting to see more of how their dynamics are unfolding. So excited for the next generation. But also, I was having enough trouble looking after a toddler and a baby. Even though the kids are pretty good at looking after themselves, it was definitely getting a bit overwhelming suddenly having all of them under one roof every day, especially when Scarlett and Dahlia kept getting into full-on fist fights. Goodness gracious. Babs is able to sell her books to publishers now. If you recall, she has the aspiration to become a famous author and recently quit her job to pursue this. She's churning out these books and manages to hit the first milestone of her aspiration. Then, baby Jay ages up from a baby to an infant. And I did a bit of research because having him called Jay felt a bit awkward after recent events, and it turns out that Jay Senior, our initial J, his full name is apparently Jameson? I don't know where this comes from, but it was on his wiki page and that makes it canon to me. Anyway, when baby Jay aged up, I did a cheeky tweak of his name in Creator Sim to make him Jamie Huntington the fourth. So technically his name would be Jameson as well, but like Jay, he's going by a shortened version. I think it fits better, and it makes things less confusing for all of us as well. Oh my god, speaking of, at one point, Jay shows up at the house unannounced, and Babs, like, goes off at him. And then a bit later on, he calls Scarlett and is like, hey, when are you gonna come visit me? And to which Scarlett is like, no. Interesting that Jay is only being nice to Scarlett once she and everyone else have moved out. Red flag. Scarlett and Dahlia, who, if you recall, gained the difficult family dynamic at the end of the last week, have sort of been forced to spend a lot of time together. They share a room now, so this forced proximity has actually made them get along a bit better. And now they are at the good friends level of relationship. Later in the week, Rowan ages up into a child as well. And then Scarlett starts going through the infamous bear phase. At the end of the week, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole trying to make progress on Dusty's aspiration. He's got the eco-innovator aspiration, and one of the requirements is to attempt to convince someone to vote on a neighborhood action plan. But it turns out this action, it's a social interaction your Sims can do. It can't be done unless you're living in an Evergreen Harbor neighborhood. And this highlights one of the biggest issues with Sims 4 generally, which is the lack of like cross-pack compatibility. Except this is actually kind of worse because this is not a feature from one pack not working with a feature from another pack. This is a feature from one pack not working with the base game, you know? Oasis Springs is a base game town, but because it doesn't have a neighborhood voting board like the neighborhoods in Evergreen Harbor, this social interaction just won't pop up at all. And this neighborhood voting board isn't something that you can get and build by. It's not even in the debug menu. Apparently it used to be in the debug menu, but for some reason they took it out. So I had to go and find it on the gallery because other people have run into this issue of having a sim with the eco-innovator aspiration unable to make progress simply because they don't live in Evergreen Harbor. And to me this is extra silly because like we have aspirations in the game that are location specific. Like we've got aspirations tied to specific towns. There's a precedent for that. So when it comes to every other aspiration in the game, they should not be locked behind your sim living in a specific town. You should be able to complete those aspirations no matter where you live. If it's not a location specific aspiration, then it shouldn't have anything to do with locations, you know? That's just silly. I don't complain about this game very much because I don't like complaining. There are enough people doing that on the internet. I like to be a voice of positivity instead because amongst the piles of shit, there are genuinely a lot of reasons to really enjoy this game. And I'm a big fan of enjoying things even if they are a little bit shit. But this just vexed me a lot. Anyway, that was the end of week 2. I know not a lot actually happened, but the main focus was on trying to get Babs and Dusty and their kids all set up. So it was just sort of a lot of normal Sims gameplay rather than like interesting drama. So moving swiftly on to week 3, we are heading back to Jay Huntington III. Let's indulge this man and his legendary crash out, shall we? So, verging on a midlife crisis, Jay has been blinded by his successful career and his money, and all he wants to do is rebuild the Huntington name and become a family dynasty that rivals the land grabs. Having been dumped by all of his romantic interests, lacking custody of any of his children, and living in a huge and now very empty mansion, I really wanted to lean into the chaos of Jay's state of mind this week. So I've decided that Jay now thinks that everyone around him is super ungrateful for everything that he was giving them. And if they are not going to be reasonable and see how important it is to rebuild the Huntington name, then he will find someone else to do it with. I also wanted to make sure that he got a promotion in his job. And to do so, he needed to reach level 4 of any needlework skill. I have a career overhaul mod as well. I think by the same person who makes the education overhaul mod, maybe, but it adds different like skill requirements for reaching the next level of the job and incorporates things from different packs. And so because he's a doctor and he's got to do like stitches and surgeries and things, he needed to reach level 4 of a needlework skill. So Jay's doing a lot of cross stitch this week. His midlife crisis is giving him all of these dazed and sad moodlets, so he's like fully out of it at the moment. But that's not gonna stop him from going out on the prowl to try and find the person who will help him rebuild the Huntington legacy. And when he was out one night, first at the bar and then at the club, I had an idea. It was perhaps not the best of ideas, I'll admit that, but it was too juicy of an idea for me not to follow through with it. I began to wonder whether it would be possible for Jay to get back together with Mitchell. Bear with me here. We saw hard proof, tangible evidence a couple of episodes ago that there is something still going on between them. A spark, let's say. Remember when they started flirting at the Caliente house? There's something there. Despite the negative sentiments on both sides, there's still enough of a something between the two of them. I actually wrote in my notes at this point, like, if Jay is crashing out, I feel like he needs to do it properly. Do with that what you will. So, after running into each other that night, genuinely did just happen to run into each other. I didn't set it up so that they would both be there. Jay asks Mitchell to get lunch with him. And I feel like he would have been very coy about it. He would have been like, no, it's not a date. After all, you've got a girlfriend. But we were so close once. And it's been so long. Maybe it's time to reconnect. As friends, of course. Let's just have lunch at a fancy restaurant that has the romantic or a lot trait. But it seems that Mitchell is acting entirely in character for him because he starts flirting with Jay right out of the gate. He's the one to make the first move. And that was all the confirmation I needed to commit to this stupid plan. So Jay invites Mitchell back to his massive mansion and pulls out all the moves, and I think he would be saying like, all this could be yours if we got back together. For Mitchell's part, I interpret his willingness to go along with all of this as him having loved Jay all along. Like, he never stopped. Even when they were beefing, I think there's always been some sort of like draw between the two of them. And you may be thinking, well, what about Nina and the literal child that the two of them had together a couple of episodes ago? Well, I think Mitchell genuinely thinks that Nina would understand. It was a questionable relationship to begin with between the two of them, you know? Like, surely she would understand him wanting to be with his one true love, right? And besides, Jay's got all of this money. That could benefit baby Zara as well. Is it the most reasonable line of thinking? No. Is it in character for Mitchell? Yeah. So Mitchell asks to move in with Jay, like, right away. I wasn't gonna have that happen immediately. I thought like, oh, I'll need to get Mitchell to like end things with Nina and deal with that whole situation first. But no, Mitchell himself said otherwise. So now he's just moved in with Jay, seemingly without having told Nina. I guess he just didn't go home that night. Also, apparently, Mitchell and Nina were actually engaged. I don't remember when that happened. Anyway, that whole conversation does not go as well as Mitchell hoped it would. Obviously, I think we all saw that one coming. And Nina gets custody of baby Zara. Again, think we all saw that one coming. I am so excited for when all of these kids grow up. The dynamics are going to be very interesting. Also, like, half of them are related. Oh my god. Now that Mitchell has moved in, I think Jay has decided to take it upon himself to improve Mitchell's life. That's how he's framing it. You know, like, he's helping him turn his life around. But really, he's just trying to mold Mitchell to fit his whole Huntington legacy aesthetic. Jay's mentoring him in fitness. Mitchell gets a haircut and some nicer clothes. And I also think that Jay would have talked Mitchell out of his dreams of becoming a comedian, because that's his lifetime aspiration, is to become a comedian, just like Johnny Zest. And I think Jay would see that as being like below their status, you know, as the Huntingtons. Mitchell's ambitions should be something something a bit more refined. And this is a particularly interesting turn of events, because this is exactly what happened with Johnny Zest and the Landgrabs. Johnny dropped out of school to pursue becoming a comedian because that was his dream, and was subsequently disowned from the Landgrab family because they didn't like that. And Jay is good friends with Johnny, and Nancy for that matter, so I imagine he knows all about this. But there he is doing the same thing to Mitchell. Whether he realizes it, I suppose we'll just have to wait and find out. So Mitchell ends up applying for university and begins a distinguished degree in culinary arts, as well as switching his lifetime aspiration to the nectar making one, nectar being the Sims family-friendly equivalent of wine. Towards the end of the week, Jay proposes right next to the garden that he initially built for Dusty. Bit awkward. But Mitchell doesn't know that. Jay, after proposing, gets the deeply in love sentiment. Oh, I fear that we were always going to end up here. I said in episode 2 that I'd never expected Mitchell and Jay to have a falling out. I thought they were going to be endgame, and somehow we've ended up right back there. Mitchell and Jay then both somehow develop good reputations. Like with the reputation system that came with Get Famous, they both have good reputations. Diabolical development, but okay, whatever. Babs sends Mitchell a text congratulating him on the engagement. That's wild. Her act of goodwill does not earn her an invite to the wedding. However, Jay is holding a grudge. Oh my god. The wedding. Okay. I have a few rules for myself in my head as I play. Largely, they revolve around embracing the chaos and living with the consequences that occur. Things like always randomizing the traits of kids, etc., etc. So, one of the rules that I have for myself is that I won't reload the save if something happens that I don't like. One of the Sims dies, guess we're having a funeral and dealing with some trauma. To me, that's just part of the joy of the game. Not the deaths, necessarily. That came out wrong, but being thrown consistent curveballs and using my imagination to try and justify them. However, when I attempted to play this wedding for Jay and Mitchell, I made the mistake of having it outdoors in summer during a heat wave and having the location locked to formal outfits. So despite the heat, nobody could change into their hot weather clothes that, you know, keep them a bit cooler and stop them from dying of overheating. I accidentally killed about 4 different Sims, one right after the other in the middle of the wedding. Nancy Landgrab, dead. Zoe Patel, dead. Paige Miller, our founding Sim, unofficial main character of this series, very much dead. One death I could have handled, but to have so many of our main starring Sims dead, with Mitchell and Jay honestly not that far behind. I got the little pop-up saying they were both about to die. I was freaking out. I panicked. And so I did the thing that I swore I would never do. I reloaded the save. Oh my god. I lost about an hour's worth of progress. Not too bad, all things considered. And as I sat there, creepily watching Jay and Mitchell sleep, I considered whether this had been a sign from the universe. Had I taken things too far? Was this my punishment for breaking up one of the most beloved relationships in this series? Was this what I got for making Mitchell cheat on another beautiful redhead with Jay goddamn Huntington III? Maybe. Was I gonna take it as such? Let me refer to my notes once more. It seems I wrote, nah, I'm gonna double down. I guess that answers that. I did use it as an opportunity to make a few small tweaks. I took Mitchell out of university. He had been enrolled for 2 days and it had been completely bugged out the whole time. He couldn't attend his classes or anything, so I just decided it wasn't worth the hassle. He could instead live a life of luxury, lazing about Jay's mansion, making ample use of the massive kitchen, and eventually looking after the new Huntington heir, when it eventually arrives. And it seemed like we were off to a pretty good start with attempt number 2, as Jay and Mitchell immediately developed the wholesome relationship dynamic. Listen, do I think their relationship is wholesome? No! I think it's a toxic dumpster fire that can only end in disaster. But do I love this for them? Obviously. I'm really invested in this storyline. Wedding number 2 went a lot smoother, by which I mean nobody died, but it was still genuinely the most chaotic wedding I have ever done. People kept getting in and out of their formal wear, including Mitchell himself at the altar, saying his vows in sunglasses, whatever. The caterer just started hanging out halfway through, sitting around and chatting with everyone. And this is now the 3rd wedding in a row where I have forgotten to get a cake. Later that night, I had them sit down to talk about having a baby, forgetting that asking someone to have a science baby will literally send them straight to the hospital to have said baby. Having a science baby with someone in Sims is what can allow 2 Sims who wouldn't otherwise be able to make a baby on their own to still have a biological child. You just skip the whole pregnancy bit and instead hop along to the hospital for a couple of hours. So Mitchell returns from the hospital with a baby girl, Theodora Huntington, the new official heir to the Huntington legacy. Mitchell gains the family-oriented trait, and Jay starts working on his will, ensuring that when he dies, everything goes to Theodora. Not Scarlett, not Jamie, Theodora and Theodora alone. I got really lucky with Jay at his doctor job, and he got the event to deliver a baby, which was the last thing he needed to get a promotion. Theodora then ages up to an infant, and seemingly all is well in the Huntington household, until right at the very end of the week. Just as I was about to hit save and quit, Jay starts arguing with Mitchell. Are the cracks beginning to show this quick? I mean, would anyone really be surprised? I guess we'll just have to wait and find out next time. Or next time we catch up with this household. Who knows when that will be? All sorts of things could happen by then. Thank you so much for watching. I am so sorry if you were a Dusty Babs J relationship fan. I was rooting for them. This must have been a real rough watch for you guys. But this is the chaotic and volatile nature of playing this way. You never know what's gonna happen when you hop into a household. And that's what makes it so much fun. Thank you so much to my channel members for supporting me and the channel. Their support is a big part of why I have been able to do these videos a bit more often recently. Channel members also get to see sneak peeks and spoilers as I'm playing, as well as getting to vote on which households I play next. Currently, I'm tending to be playing an episode in advance, so by the time this video goes out, I'll be ready to start the gameplay for the next episode, if that makes sense. So when you're in the comments leaving suggestions on who you want to see, if you want to do that, just keep in mind that you might not see them in the next episode. It'll be the one after that. I hope that made sense. Yeah, that's all I've got. Bye! Oh, that was a bit of a weird one. That was like, I went a bit Cookie Monster there. Okay.